So, you want a new top. You go online to your favourite clothing store, find the one you like, add it to your basket, check out, and wait for it to arrive. When it comes, you open it up, try it on, and realise it doesn't fit. So you put it back in the bag, return it to the store, ready for someone else to buy. Right? Well, not all the time. Sometimes after you've returned it, it actually ends up here.
When you buy your t-shirt online, it gets packaged up. So there's the impact of the packaging, there's the impact of the transport. It gets to your house, you try it on, and let's say it doesn't fit, you don't like it, and then you return it. So then you repackage it, and then you've got that carbon footprint of that transport again. And we'd like to think that these things are lovingly unpacked, and then they're sent out and redistributed back to the next customer and reused. The sad fact is, it's probably cheaper for the company at that point to just discard that item, so that we're creating a lot more waste than we think we are every time we return these goods.
Every year in the US, 3.5 billion items are returned, and only 20% of these are actually damaged or faulty. So after an item has been shipped around a country or even the globe a few times, it can then find its way to landfill.
When our clothes are made, the synthetic clothes like this, they come from petrochemicals. So the clothes have an impact because they come from oil, so there's a carbon footprint there, and they come from an unsustainable source. But even the natural fibres that we're wearing, they still have to be grown. And one of the things that people perhaps don't realise is things like the water footprint of what we're wearing. So the crops like cotton is an incredibly water intensive crop. So in fact, what we're actually doing when we are ordering things online and wearing it quickly and it's ending up in landfill, what we're actually doing is taking water probably from an area that can't afford that water and growing these things in unsustainable conditions, and then we're shipping it to wherever we are and then just discarding it. And the impact on resources like water and land is unacceptable.
It takes around 2,700 litres of water to make just one t-shirt, which is enough water for one person to drink for 900 days.
Because it's like the amount of water in a pair of jeans is just staggering. You know, we think about the water's used so much in our clothes we don't realise. So there's the water in growing the crop, but then there's the water used in the processing and the dyeing, and that dyeing process as well has an impact because that then pollutes water. And often these clothes are produced in places where the environmental controls are maybe not so good, and where the impact has more of an effect on those people that live there.
And once these items end up in landfill, in the right conditions, they'll still be there long after we're gone.
Well, the thing about degradation of materials, like say this top that I'm wearing now, in different conditions it'll degrade differently. And just the same as plastic, it depends on where it ends up. But in the right conditions, a top like this could well be preserved. So we have done studies where we've looked into things like the way things that behave in landfill, and there have been clothes that have been found that just look intact many years after they've been discarded. And the problem that we have is that these clothes haven't been around long enough, plastic hasn't been around long enough for us really to know how it behaves in the natural environment and how long it takes to degrade in all kinds of situations. But in the worst case scenario, these things can be preserved, and at the rate that we're throwing them away, we're just building up microplastics and macroplastics in the environment that's going to stay around for a long time.
We're all responsible to help reduce the damage that fast fashion has on our environment. And it's clear that many companies don't have the technology in place to handle returned items.
Well, I think one of the problems that's driving fast fashion is the pricing of some of these clothes. A lot of these clothes are way too cheap for the carbon that they represent and the environmental impact that they represent. And I think one of the things that businesses could do is include that environmental impact in the pricing and act and contribute to the mitigation of that environmental impact. by doing things like planting trees to mitigate the carbon, or looking for sources that are more sustainable. Another thing that businesses could do is encourage the consumer to choose more sustainably and be more transparent about where the goods come from, how they're made, and to encourage consumers to keep their clothes longer, not to just take something and discard it, and maybe think about a purchase not as a fast fashion. We shouldn't be thinking about clothes that are going to last a long time. We should be thinking about keeping them, and if we're not going to be using them, passing them on to somebody else who is. They're not a disposable item, and we shouldn't be selling them as such.
And as a consumer, there are many things that you can look out for when purchasing clothes.
Consumers can find information out from producers and sellers of clothes by the most obvious thing is to look at the website. A lot of companies, if they are doing sustainable things, they are more likely going to be shouting about it on the website, and they want you to know that, so you shouldn't have to dig too hard. But if you do contact companies about their ethical practices and about the companies are very approachable now, and it's easy to send an email. And by doing that, what you're doing is communicating to that company that it is important to you. And the more of us that do that, then those companies that are perhaps not doing these sustainable practices might catch on.